Hello everyone, my name is Ariel and welcome back to another one of my videos. Today I am bringing you my favorites of 2019. I know I am way behind everyone else, but that's because I was clinging on to the hope that I was going to read another like 5-star favorite book by the end of the year. Turns out, didn't happen. I think I've learned my lesson. I should just once there's no way to just cram another book that you think is going to be a favorite, especially if you're trying to cram it in and you're working for it. It's not. So unfortunately, none of the books that I read towards the end of December made it into my favorites video, but I was so clinging on to that string. So that's why all of my videos are coming out a little bit later than everyone else's, is because I was trying to fit in as many books as I could into December. I learned my lesson though, not going to be happening again, and I do, now that it's over and I've read all of my books for the year, I have picked out 10 that are my top 10 favorites, and I read 70 books this year, so that's quite a lot for me. My Goodreads Gold started out at 50 books, and I extended it to 55 because I don't know why I only did 5 more, because I think I beat it, I forget when I beat it, but I beat it quite a while ago. So I'm really proud of myself. Yeah, so I've picked 10 books out of those 70 to share with you guys today as my top favorite, and I will be going in order from 10 to number 1, as a number 1 being my most favorite, but all of these have touched me in some sort of way, and I'm here to share them with you all. So you might recognize some of these. I feel like I don't talk a lot about my favorites, but maybe I do. I think I'm just bad at talking about books, so that's probably why. Without further ado, number 10 on my list is Always and Forever, Lara Jean by Jenny Han. I read this early on in 2019 in February. It was part of my series that I wanted to read in 2019, and I actually finished the series. This is the final book in the To All the Boys I Loved Before series. I didn't expect to fall in love with it as much as I did. I really can't tell you much about this because it is the 3rd book in a series, but it touched me in ways that I really, like I said, didn't expect, so it was surprising. And you'll find that a lot of my favorite books were kind of surprising to me, that I ended up falling in love with it as much as I did. I think the reason why is because in this book, more than others, I connected very much with Lara Jean's struggles and her relationship, her family dynamic. It kind of, I feel like the first 2 were very more fluffy, where this one was definitely more realistic and grounded into what reality is like and the struggles of making decisions about your future and who you want to take with you. There were so many, I cried while reading this book, and I cried multiple times. I cried when I was driving home from work listening to the audiobook, and then of course the final chapter. I don't know if you probably have read it, but if you haven't, it's always asked who your book boyfriend is, and I say Peter Kavinsky, but only book 3 Peter Kavinsky, because he literally has my heart and soul, especially in this book. He really cares for Lara Jean, and he wants, it's so hard to, I want to say so much about this, but I can't because it's the final book in the series, but this book really, more than others, tests their relationship. And it's so heartbreaking to see kind of their struggles through it all. And things in life, it just talks about how life is fleeting and the uncertainties of future and stuff like that. So that is why I loved this, and I think I related to a lot of the themes and things that were going on in this book. And I love Peter Kavinsky so much. And so this is why it made it up on to my list. I know I've talked about this before on my channel, and I'm so glad I read this series this year, and it is one of my favorites, and I cannot wait for the next 2 movies to come. I'm so excited. So yes, this was number 10 on my list. Coming in at number 9 is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is part of the Infernal Devices series. This is the 1st book in the Infernal Devices series, which is like a prequel historical fiction Shadowhunters book. And this, I love this because I love all of the characters. And you'll find that a lot with the books that I enjoy. I'm very much a character person. I have to connect to the characters in order to involve myself in the story and to care what's going on. So if you don't know this, again, if you don't know about the original story, Shadowhunters are basically people who hunt all the bad things and protect the world from demons. I like this one though because it had some science fiction elements into it and kind of a little bit of a steampunk feel, which I love steampunk. And there's like, in this book, we follow the London Institute, and there's this girl named Tessa Gray who has this special ability, and they don't kind of know what she is or where she's from, and there's a lot of mystery regarding her past and who she thought she was and where she came from. So she falls into the London Institute with our characters Will Herondale, Jem, Carstairs, and Jessamine, who I loved. I love all of them. I love Jessamine so much. She was like my favorite character in this. I love her sass. I love the dichotomy between her wanting to be a lady and wanting to reject this shadow hunter life, but also being super badass and really good at being a shadow hunter. But she like hates it. And she's such a brat. It's just kind of, it brings an element of fun to it, because it just provides that extra tension. I love Will, I love Jem, and I love the writing. This is, to me, a lot darker than the City of Bones original was, and I love that it's taken this kind of darker turn. Especially with the characters, there's a lot more morally, well, Will in particular is a lot more morally gray than I guess Jace ever was. Jace was just kind of a dick. And Will is too, but he's got more to him, like, underneath the surface, I feel like. And so I really enjoyed this. I loved the setting, I loved the atmosphere. It did a really good job at keeping me guessing on what was going to happen next. That's a big issue with me too, is when we have a lot of mystery going on, I try and figure it out, and if I can figure it out, it kind of hinders my enjoyment a little bit. I like to be surprised, which is my fault because I shouldn't be looking for the answer, but that's just like naturally what I do. So I really enjoyed this. I'm excited to continue on with the series, and I know everyone talks about the third book, so I'm ready to be broken, but this was my number 9 and I loved it so much. Coming in at number 8 is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is one of the few books that made me literally laugh out loud this year, and I know this is on a lot of people's top 10 lists, and it deserves to be there. This is literally internet humor in a book. This gives me like all the best vibes about Twitter, Vine, memes. Like, there's so many one-liners and so clever like comebacks and wit, and it just feels so iconic of its time right now. Like, this was perfect. This, if you don't know, follows an alternate reality of, in the 2016 elections, it was won by a woman, and it follows the son of the president, whose name is Alex, and his very quick to hate to love, rivalry to love with the Prince of Wales, Henry. The turkey scene, the cake scene, like everything about this was so funny, and I loved their relationship. I loved, again, this is a book where I loved all of the characters, even the side characters. His sister was, I think, Zara, whoever like the Secret Service bodyguard was. Everyone in here had their own shining moments, and no one fell to the background, in my opinion. Again, this is a great example of like making every character shine. This, I want to reread this soon because it was so funny, and I recommend it. If you haven't picked this up, I 10 out of 10 recommend. I feel like everyone who is alive right now and is a young person, or at least my age, if you're on Twitter, read this book. It's so funny. And their romance is so cute, and it's just adorable, and I love the chaos that is just this book. Everything about it is so funny. So this made my number 8, and I can't wait to read it again. I love it so much, and I'm excited to look for anything else that Casey McQuiston writes, because this was everything. Coming in at number 7 is Doll Bones by Holly Black. This is a middle grade novel that also made me cry, which might not be saying much because literally anything could make me cry, but it's such a tiny book and so much has happened that builds my heart so much in this book. This is about our main character, Zach. He has 2 best friends named Poppy and Alice, and they have this imaginary game, and they each have their own little action figure, and they just play pretend, basically. And they each have their own kind of personal struggles going on in their lives. Zach in particular, his father has been gone for, I think it's the last 3 years, and he's only been back for a couple of months. So all of a sudden he decides he is hurt and heartbroken, and he doesn't know how to feel about his family, and he about how his dad, he's upset. He tries to ditch his friends and distance himself from him because that's what his dad thinks he should do. They're kind of lost and upset that he doesn't want to play with them anymore, so Poppy comes to them in the dead of night and says they need to come together for one last quest, because the doll that they pretend is the queen, which is like an antique doll that belongs to her mother, she says it's been haunting her in her dreams, and that there's a little girl who is trapped inside the doll that needs to be put to rest and buried in her proper grave. So it is a spooky novel. I definitely recommend this to anyone. There was some creepy elements to it. Nothing too terrible. All of the children have something that they are personally struggling with. I don't know how to describe it. I care about these characters so much, and I love them. And they go on this epic adventure that I could just picture myself, like, if I was 12 years old. Like, it is crazy the things that they get into and, like, the bravery that they have. It was honestly a really amazing journey, and it made me cry. And I feel so much for these children, and I just want to give them all a big hug because that's what they deserve. And I love the spooky elements of it. It was really creepy. It was a lot of fun, and this will forever be one of my favorites. Coming in at number 6, another one of Holly Black's books, and that is The Wicked King by Holly Black. I love this. I don't know what else to say other than what is obvious. Everyone has heard of the Folk of the Air trilogy by now. I love The Cruel Prince, but I love The Wicked King even more. I love the power struggle between Jude and Cardan. I love their angsty romance. This gives me all of the giddy feels that I had when I was a teenager. I haven't followed any sort of romance stan accounts since I started reading The Wicked King. It honestly provided me with that feeling of, like, squeeness. Ew, I hate myself. And just all of, like, the memes that people make and, like, the imagined conversations between these two. It's very reminiscent of the time of when I was a teenager, and I love this. I love Jude as a character. I love all of the characters in this. Again, I love Cardan. I don't love Taryn, actually, but she's the character that you love to hate because she just does some awful things, and at least she has, like, a personality, and you... Ugh. And then Locke. If you don't know, is about a girl named Jude who is kidnapped by her, I guess, quasi-father and is taken to Fairyland with her sister and her half-sister. And she is raised there, but humans are looked down upon in Fairyland, and so she's kind of had to struggle to kind of gain this sense of power, and she's just amazing. She is a badass. It's too bad that we were ruined in Queen of Nothing, but we're gonna ignore that. I loved the ending of this, and I have never, like, been so kind of... That's a lie, because there's other books in this list that I've been shell-shocked of what happened, but I remember the feeling of when I finished this being like, ooh, he just did that? What? What? Did everyone else hear that? Did everyone else see that? I was like, oh my god, and I could not wait for the final book to come out. And I just think this one delves into their relationship so much more than I think the first one. You really get a feel of their dynamic, and whether or not, it's such an interesting thing to see, like, how far their trust in each other goes and where its limit is at. I love this book. And I love Holly Black's writing. Obviously, Dollbones was also on my list. She is one of my favorite authors, but I really like her writing style and I love anything to do with fairies. Let's just say that. I love that too. I think she did such a great job at creating this world and feeling like it was real, and I could imagine myself in the locations of everywhere that she described. I could picture the characters clearly in my head, and I'm invested into so many of these people in this book. So she did a really good job with this. This is probably one of my favorite middle books in a series. I won't say my favorite middle book in a series, but it's one of them. So we have reached my top 5, and I feel only the slightest bit guilty about putting this particular book in my top 5, and I will explain why, and you'll probably understand it. But starting off my top 5 is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, which is a reread, but hear me out. Okay, I read this when it initially came out, and I think, let me see on my Goodreads, because it'll show me on here when I read it. I read it back in 2016, which was a good 3 years ago. And let me tell you, I didn't know half of what was going on because I didn't know that this was like kind of a spin-off or in the same world as the Grishaverse. So when things were being described as like fabricators and corporalniks, I can't say any of the words, I really didn't have kind of any clue what was going on, but like I still enjoyed the writing and I was there for the ride, but I was confused through a lot of it. And there were definitely major things that I forgot the first time I read it. I'm telling you, like, big things about characters, like Kaz's past and how, like, his brother, I forgot all about that. I learned things about Jesper that I should have realized in the first one. Because I had read the first 2 books in the Grisha trilogy, it provided me with so much more understanding, and I was able to love it way more than I did the first time. And every time I picked up this book and I was reading it, I wanted it to be real so bad. And like, it reels in the fact, like, I don't even know what I mean by that. Like, would I want to live in their lives? No, not really, because it's kind of terrifying and I wouldn't be able to survive. I'm too soft for that. But I love these characters so much that I want them to be real, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And every time I would read it, I would be so grateful that this is being turned into a TV series, because I want, these characters felt so alive and so real to me that's why I wanted them to be real, is because I feel like they have to be. Like, oh my gosh, again, characters. I love characters. I guess that's what 2019 was a discovery of that, like, in order for me to care about something, I have to love the characters. God, I love all of them. I love Wylan. Wylan is like my baby. He reminds me of myself, just like trying to defend himself. Everyone's picking on him and he's doing the best he can. I love Nina. She is a queen. She is me to a T, but like all the way. I love Kaz. Hell yes, I love Kaz. Let's talk about, this is kind of in the same realm as Clockwork Angel, but like even better than that, obviously, because it's further on the list. But Leigh Bardugo doesn't really pull her punches when it comes to writing dark material, and I really enjoy that about her writing, is that she's not afraid to go there, and she's not afraid to like really show us literally no mercy to get the job done. And I love stories like that. That's what makes me really interested in Vicious, because it kind of has that, I like really great morally great characters. And Kaz is definitely that. And he fascinates me so much. And yeah, I love the grittiness of this. I love the backstabbing and the, again, like the tension of trust. And Kaz and Inej. Another OTP, as well as Jesper and Wylan. I mean, Mateus and Nina. I love Nina. Mateus I like him too, but like, they're not really endgame for me the way that Wylan and Jesper and Kaz and Inej are. But every time I pick this up, I was transported, is literally all I can say, is that it felt so real. So that is why I put this on my number 5 spot. I know it's a reread, but it was really honestly as if I had read it for the first time. And this is my list, this is my channel, so if you don't like how I decide to do my books, then you all can leave. Thank you. Go watch a different video, but I had to put this on there, and I would have put it higher, but I felt guilty enough putting it on my list because I had already read it, but I'm telling you, I pretty much was just reading it for the first time. Coming in at number 4 is Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. This, forget The Wicked King, this might be my favorite middle book in a series. This took me on such a ride, and we were introduced to a new character named Grayson, who is one of my favorite characters in this series. Actually, I like him almost more than Citra and Rowan. Not even almost, I do like him more than Citra and Rowan. I love Grayson. I love his struggles, and I love the Thunderhead, which this book we really got to get a glimpse inside the Thunderhead and its decision making, and it's heartbreaking. It's hard when you see that both perspectives between him and this other being are trying so desperately to connect, and when you want to hear something from someone that means so important to you, but there are circumstances outside of your control, it's not a miscommunication trope, but it's literally something that you cannot get past. And just, I can't say too much about this either because it's the second book in a series. If you have not read the Archivist, or what is it, the Ark of a Scythe trilogy, I highly recommend. This is set in a world where all natural causes of death have been eliminated, and in order to keep the population under control, there are people who are ordained as scythes, and they are tasked with the job to cull the population back so that it can stay underneath control. And you would think that with such an important job and something that is so sensitive in a way, that they would have some sort of compassion and feeling towards the taking of a life of someone else, the intimacy of it. But there are people in this society that are corrupt, that are just give you a glimpse of like what pure actual evil is. That's also something I really like with my stories, is that if they don't have like a fully well-wrapped happy ending, like you get what you wanted but not in the way that you wanted it. I like not feeling, is it weird not feeling fully satisfied? That satisfies me. It satisfies me not to be fully satisfied. That doesn't make any sense, but that's what I mean. And this gave that to me. I love it. I don't know what else to say other than the fact that it is one of my all-time favorites. It's number 4 on my list. And if you haven't read this series, go read it, please. We are on to my top 3. And let's see if you can guess what they are. Coming in at number 3 is Autobiography by Christina Lauren. And this is another book that made me bawl my heart out. And this was such an important book to me, and I think it could be a lot of, like, an important book to a lot of people who are struggling with their sexuality or, you know, their family. There's a lot of things that go on that really touched me and was important to me in a way that I wanted to share with other people. If you haven't read this, please go read it. I recommend it so much. I know there are things that people are unhappy about, gentleness with which it was approached. I think it was handled very well, the topics of which it discusses. If you don't know, this follows a boy named Tanner who lived in California, but he is moved to Utah in a very conservative Mormon community because of his mother's job, and he was openly bisexual in California, but he has to recloset himself because his parents are afraid of what society will do and treat him if they find out that he's bisexual. And he ends up falling for a boy who's his TA named Sebastian. Sebastian took the class the previous year, and he's now graduated, and he's here to help out because he was very successful. That's pretty much it. And Sebastian is Mormon, and he is like the son of like a deacon or something like that, some like big important church figure. And this touched my heart, and there were so many important conversations. And one thing that stuck out to me, and I mentioned it in my vlog, is when they're discussing sexuality, and they're talking about how he's bisexual and how he's attracted to both women and men. And Sebastian asks him, well, if you're bisexual, why wouldn't you just exclusively date females? Like, life would be so much easier for you. You wouldn't have so much hate coming towards your way. No one would even know. And Tanner comes back and says, you don't get to choose who you love. And that is the biggest thing to me. I feel like it's very important for good bisexual representation and for people to understand that. To me, that was such an important quote, because I don't think a lot of people understand, especially when it comes to being bisexual, what it truly means and the own unique struggles that it comes with that, and the kind of erasure of if you're bisexual and you're dating someone of the opposite gender, that you're not actually bisexual, or that you, I don't know, I just have a lot of friends and family who I know would gain so much from this book, who are openly bisexual and have gone through similar struggles. And this reminded me of like one friend in particular. Made it to my number 3 because I read it within one day. It was not only emotional, but it was so fun and loving, and you really had, not only, aside from the relationship too, Tanner's family is so accepting and so understanding, and they want what's best for him. They wish he didn't have to be in the closet. They wish that everyone would be as accepting of them as they are, but that's not the world that we live in, and so they're honestly so concerned with what's best for him and protecting him and making sure that he's okay. And it's nice to see families like that in books because you don't generally get that at all. And it was so beautiful to see how much his parents cared about him. I definitely think you should go read it if you haven't already. And I'm not even a contemporary person. I maybe have like, 3 contemporaries on this list, and this made it to my number 3. I struggled with such a hard time, like, doing my top 3. I put this in my number 1 spot, I moved to my number 2, and back and forth with all the other ones. And finally I was like, I couldn't put it any less than a 3. I read it in one day and I love it so much. It is one of my all-time favorite books. I think you could probably guess what the last 2 are by now, but we'll see. But number 2 is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I also read this in basically a day. Not quite. I did a 24-hour readathon on this. I feel like I'm a broken record at this point, but these characters I would die for. I love Elizabeth. I love Nathaniel, and God knows how much I love Silas. I would lay down my life for Silas. He is one of the most interesting characters I have ever read about. This story is about our main character, Elizabeth. She has grown up in and lives in one of the grand libraries of this world. The libraries contain spell books, which are called grimoires, and they have souls inside of them. And the more powerful spell books can come alive and become deviant and destroy things. And when one of them escapes, the warden of her library dying, and she is blamed for it. So she is caught up in this conspiracy, and she has to be taken to answer for her crimes because she's being blamed for this murder. And her whole life she has been told that sorcerers are evil, the people who use the grimoires demonic, and they're out for themselves and they cannot be trusted. Well, she runs into the sorcerer Nathaniel, who is taking her in to be called into question for what happened at the library, and she ends up befriending him and realizes that everything that they said about sorcerers weren't true. Silas is Nathaniel's companion, and he is there along with him, and he such an interesting dichotomy to his character. This, I always say, will give me Harry Potter vibes because there's a lot of mischief that goes along with this. There's so much fun and so much rule breaking that they were in a library, but it kind of felt like breaking the rules at Hogwarts. They were doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and they were sneaking out of bed at night and figuring out mysteries that they were told not to solve and to stay out of the way. And I don't know why, but the main villain in this, like, reminded me of Gilderoy Lockhart, but like a subtly more evil Gilderoy Lockhart. I also cried in this like twice. I want desperately for this to be a series, and it left off in a way that it's possible it could happen. And I want it to happen. I love Elizabeth. I love Nathaniel. Nathaniel is such a snarky little son of a bitch. And Elizabeth, I mentioned this before, again in my videos, if you love Tangled and if you love the dynamic between Rapunzel and Flynn Rider, this is that. This is Harry Potter meets Rapunzel meets cuteness, and I was about to read it in one day, but I realized I didn't want it to end, so I was prolonging the process of me finishing it because I didn't want it to be over. We got some tall girl rep, we got some bisexual rep, we got some demonry rep, and there was a lot of great friendships in this, self-sacrificing for your friends and for your loved ones and going against your better interest. It gave me real, like, Griffin Puff energy where there's bravery, there's loyalty, and just laying yourself down for the ones that you love regardless of whether or not that's going to be beneficial to you. It deserves everything, and I want to collect every edition of this. I want, someone give me the purple one. I want the purple one. Alrighty, we've made it to my number 1 book of the year. I don't know if you guys will guess it, possibly, but it is The Toll by Neil Shusterman. I can confidently say is my favorite end book in a series. I don't think anything that I've read could touch this it deserves the 5 stars that I gave it, and it worked hard for that 5 stars because it was a little shaky in the beginning, but it really pulled itself together like halfway through. And want to talk about a bittersweet ending? This was so bittersweet. Again, the conversation that it poses of philosophy of humanity and whether or not we deserve a second chance, honestly. And who deserves a second chance, and it really kind of installs that faith that maybe we can pull through all of the crap that we've done to each other and to the earth and to society. It really is a battle against evil, and evil is coming for us, and how do we escape? How do we make it through? And I love the religious kind of subtext and parallels that it gives in this book. That's fascinating to me. I really, again, can't go too much into this because it's the final book in a series. I don't know if I could ever express how much I love the Thunderhead. And I almost hate saying that because in the beginning, the first book, I was really wondering whether or not the Thunderhead was a good or bad character. And it really delves into that question too in this book. God, it's so interesting, and I was rooting for everyone, and it shows that even the best in society can be flawed and can be broken, and it really beats you down and then it brings you back up. That's how I feel anyway. Every time you think you're defeated, there's hope to go on, which is what I needed. And again, it was a very bittersweet ending. I was satisfied, not being fully satisfied in the perfect way. I love how it ended. I love imagining where these characters are now. I hope that they're finally okay because my heart is with them. It really pulled at my heart, and it always will. It was fascinating. This is like science fiction at its greatest. I never thought I was a sci-fi person until this, and now I think I am. I really should read more sci-fi because this interested me so much. And it's so hard to describe at this point. I don't know what else to say without saying too much, other than the fact that I put this at my number 1, and I think it definitely deserves to be there. This is my favorite end book in a series. This is my favorite book of 2019. Alrighty, well, thank you for sticking with me throughout all of this. Let me know if any of these books made it onto your top lists of 2019. I highly recommend all of them, clearly, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.